What's up, beautiful world? You know the drill by now. I'm Andrew Coppins. This is After the Numbers, where, guess what? We take a deeper look behind the facts, figures, language, and numbers that form so many arguments in the United States and beyond. This week, I really struggled with what to talk about. There was so much happening. But one thing just kept jumping off the page at me, and it was perhaps the best piece of logical satire I have ever read. It was a piece in the Federalist by Stephen Lavides titled "My Wife and I Have Decided to Abort Our Unborn Gay Son." So I want to start off today's show with a full read of this piece. That's how important I think it is to combating the pro-abortion movement's claims these days. All right, with that in mind, here's the full piece in all of its glory. Are you ready for Storytime with Andrew, courtesy of Stephen Lavidas? My girlfriend and I recently found out she's pregnant. I told her I'd support her and the baby, and secretly started saving for an engagement ring. She said she thought I would have wanted her to get an abortion. I didn't, at least at first. She was excited and started planning the nursery. It took me 2 months to save up, but I finally got on one knee and popped the question. She cried and said yes. I'm still scared about being a dad, but I've got a good job and so does she. We'll make a great family, just the three of us. Last week, though, she went in for a checkup. We decided to get a full fetal blood work done. Everyone's doing it. The doctor said there's little risk to the fetus and better safe than sorry, right? I'm sure everything will be fine and we'll learn the sex. I really hope it's a boy. Oh, and we decided to make everything official with a trip to the courthouse. We're married now. Well, got the blood work results, and there's good news and bad news. Good news, it's a boy, and he's healthy. Bad news, he's gay. I didn't even know there was a blood test for that now, but I guess it is new. They found the gene that causes homosexuality, and they test for them now. I'm a really tolerant person, but this has made me think hard. I don't know how I feel about trying to raise a gay son. Will I be able to relate to him? Won't his life be super hard? I know things are getting better for gay people, but it seems to me that being gay is really hard in the South where we live. Gay people aren't really accepted here like in other parts of the country yet. This really started to weigh on my mind, so I did some research. Suicide attempts are significantly higher among gay teens, 5 times more likely. Gay kids are 5 times more likely than a heterosexual youth to end up hospitalized as a result. More than 70% of calls to Trevor Lifeline, a targeted suicide prevention hotline, come from the south and central regions of the country, right where I live. Another study found that any kind of victimization at school leads to much higher risks of substance abuse. Studies in progressive states like Vermont and Massachusetts found that for gay and bisexual boys, rates of victimization were nearly 5 times that of straight kids. More disturbingly, that victimization coincides with a host of risky behaviors, from cigarette and alcohol abuse all the way up to hard drugs like cocaine and heroin. Gay kids are way more likely to do all of these things than similarly persecuted straight kids. On top of that, in every studied risk factor but cigarette use, gay and bisexual boys are at a much greater risk than girls. What kind of life would my gay son have? How could I justify subjecting him to horrible experiences for his entire life? I can't imagine what things here in the South must be like. I remember being accused of being gay in school. It was awful. I don't know if we could send our child to public schools. We would need to find and pay for a progressive private school. If we couldn't afford it, I guess we could homeschool. But this is not at all how we wanted our future to be. We both have good jobs we love. But I don't see how we can afford private schools. And which one of us would give up our jobs to homeschool our son? So my wife and I talked, and we've decided we aren't ready to raise a gay child. It isn't fair to raise a gay child in our area. It would be so hard for our son to live here, and I don't think either of us could handle it if he killed himself. Moving elsewhere just to have this baby would be totally unfair to us. We are going to get an abortion, both for the child's sake and for ours. It's the best thing for all of us. I'm really glad we found out before it's too late. I've never been more thankful for a woman's right to choose what to do with her body. My wife told one of her friends that we are going to have an abortion because we don't feel equipped to deal with raising a gay child. Apparently, it got around to some of our gay friends from college. I've been getting emails, texts, and IMs all day from them asking me why I'm a homophobe and why I hate gay people. I don't hate gay people. I just can't bring a child into the world who would have such a hard time. I mean, we'd do the same thing if the fetus had Down syndrome, and so would about 67% of others if they had found out themselves in that situation. Even Richard Dawkins tweeted that it would be immoral to have a child who would suffer because of his genetics. Many people believe it's immoral to bring a child into the world who is just going to suffer. Ending the pregnancy is just better for everyone. It seems so obvious. I don't understand. It's my wife's body. It's her choice, and I agree with it. It's our choice of what to do with our pregnancy. How can anyone else tell my wife what to do with her body? Tomorrow's the day we're supposed to go in for the abortion, but we've had to switch clinics twice due to the threats. We actually ended up crossing the state line to go to a clinic 4 hours from home. Thankfully, the federal law allowing abortion makes that possible. I was exhausted, but it's our choice. No one else can tell us what my wife is allowed to do with her body. We got to the clinic almost an hour early. They made us sit in the waiting room for a while and finally called us back. But instead of walking us into a table with stirrups like we expected, they escorted us into an office. A man in a lab coat was waiting at a desk. "I recognize you," he said, after looking at us sternly for what seemed like an eternity. I didn't know what to say, so I didn't say anything. My wife didn't speak either. "What you are doing should be a hate crime, and I won't have any part in it," the man said, looking angry. "But it's my body," my wife said, sounding defiant, but like a little girl too. "It's my right." "It's hateful," the doctor responds. "You are terminating this pregnancy because you don't want a gay child. Are gay children less valuable than straight children?" He sounded like a teacher trying to impart a lesson to a very slow student. "No, but," my wife started to say. "A gay child has just as much value as a straight child. In fact, you are lucky. Gay children are very rare. Census numbers put the number of homosexuals in America at around 3%. It wouldn't take many more people like you," he nearly spits the words, "to eliminate homosexuality in America. That's genocide, and I won't have that on my conscience." With that, we were ushered out. My wife cried all the way home. When we got there, we found that someone had firebombed our rented townhouse and wrote "Bigotry doesn't belong here" and "Love wins" in spray paint on the sidewalk. I guess some fetuses are more equal than others, but I can't understand it. I just followed all the arguments I've heard from our society to their logical conclusions.
I swear I've seen a lot of stuff in my life, but that was awesome.
Why did I just read that entire piece? Because, as I said earlier, it is perhaps the best takedown of the logic that has been thrown out by pro abortion advocates as of late. Of course, there is no gay gene, if you will, although there likely are studies out there trying to find something like that. But the point of this article is to make one think. It takes on the logic spewed by many in the pro abortion movement as of late in a matter of fact way. It also asks a very pointed question, and one I find most pro abortion advocates will never answer, namely, where do you draw the line? Would they be okay with someone saying that they don't want a gay son or daughter and we're going to abort that baby? No. But these same people believe it's okay to kill a baby because it has Down syndrome? They would. And all you need to know is an article by CBS News from August of 2017 titled, "What Kind of Society Do You Want to Live In? Inside the Country Where Down Syndrome is Disappearing." What the article headline won't tell you is that nearly 100% of the women in Iceland who find out that their babies have Down syndrome decided to terminate their pregnancies, otherwise known as get an abortion. The law in Iceland allows for an abortion after 16 weeks if there is a deformity found, and Down syndrome is on the list of deformities. Denmark's rate is 95% termination, and France is at 77%, while the US is at 67%, which was pointed out in the article we just read. The point here is that what is the difference between one set of difficulties growing up and another? What about those who have a heart defect that would require surgeries throughout one's life just to live? How about those who are born with spinal injuries or bone defects? What about a deaf or blind child? How do you define what life is worth living and what life is worth killing? If you know the answer to that, let me shake your hand, because you must be God. The reality is, answering those questions with any sort of honesty would totally take the mask off the pro abortion movement. So I say, go ahead, pro aborts, defend that position. Keep on doing it, because the more you do it, the more the mask comes off. Remember, it used to be you telling us that abortion should be safe, legal, and rare, but that was always a lie, because deep down you believe killing a baby until it's born is perfectly okay for any reason. As sad as I find that position to be, at least it's the honest position for a change. It's just a fundamental values difference. But as honest as they've been in taking the mask off, they've also been deceitful in how they go about executing these new laws passed and proposed. Why else is the language in new laws being passed and advocated for so vague when it comes to health and safety of the mother? Why did the writers of these types of state bills refuse to define health in a narrow way, such that all it really does take is saying you lost your job or your boyfriend left you or a myriad of other excuses, and it can be defined as risk to your health? Don't believe me? Look up the accepted definition from the U.S. Supreme Court decision in Doe versus Bolton, which was the companion case to Roe versus Wade. In that case, SCOTUS decided health would mean physical, emotional, psychological, or familial well being. That's it. No narrow understanding as to what would be acceptable under those terms. What did SCOTUS mean by familial well being, for example? It's such a broad term that a doctor could name anything that's affecting the health of the mother and allow the abortion to happen. You don't have to take my word for it. You can take the word of the only real study done on this, courtesy of the Guttmacher Institute. According to that study, there were close to 11,100 abortions performed after the 21st week of pregnancy in 2014 alone. The most frequent reasons given? Relationship problems, young or old maternal age, and educational or financial concerns. Not one of those is a real health risk to the mother. Those are all elective reasons. Further, according to an article in the Federalist, Dr. Mary Davenport, who is an OBGYN, points out advocates of abortion insist that late abortion must be kept legal because certain serious maternal health problems require abortions. This is completely false. There is no medical situation in which late abortion is medically necessary to save the life of the mother. In a common late abortion technique, a lethal intracardiac injection is given and labor is induced. This takes between 2 and 4 days and is not a procedure done in true emergency situations. Some of you may say that this is just a slippery slope argument, but that's not really true when you have proof of doctors willing to do abortions like we're talking about already. Take a look at the preview for the new movie titled Unplanned that is about to come out in May and got an R rating for the subject matter that is discussed. I'll link to that one in the description because it does take a few minutes. It doesn't take a leap of logic, however, to understand that people will game any system, even ones that are dealing with human life. There are bad people in all walks of life. Just look at Kermit Gosnell if you need a great example of that within the abortion industry. All of this leads us to the point that it's really difficult for the pro-abortion movement to defend the positions they have taken as of late. This is a culture war worth having. What is the soul of the American people? Is it on the side of protecting life at all costs, or is it the one that believes one group of people has more value than another? It really is that simple. Alright, as crazy as all of that was, we move on to a brand new segment on the show. One I'm introducing as I look at some of the craziness that's happening in our world. It's simply called
Mother of God.
Today's Mother of God segment comes courtesy of Duke University, where the Catholic Center was put front and center for having the audacity to bring a lecture to campus titled Only the Vision of God Can Make Someone Happy. The guest lecturer's name is Michael Pakuluk. Well, actually, let me correct that statement. The guest lecturer was supposed to be Michael Pakuluk. You see, according to Duke's student newspaper, The Chronicle, at the last meeting of the student government, Junior Manesh Kumar, Senator for Academic Affairs, argued that the lecture's title could be triggering for LGBTQ students. You heard that right. God and happiness are triggering to gay people, apparently. And that just couldn't stand. So naturally, the lecture isn't going to happen, and the bullying from LGBTQ groups on campus continues. Yes, technically the Catholic Center withdrew its request for funds from the Duke student government, but make no mistake about it, that only happened to avoid further bullying from the LGBTQ groups. They forced a religious speaker off of a campus that was founded by Methodists and Quakers. Are these same activists complaining and bullying Muslim speakers and protesting the Muslim call to prayer that Duke started to allow on Fridays earlier this decade? Nope. And that religion and its theocracies in the Middle East are literally killing people for just being gay. Yet they had a problem with this talk, which has a description as follows. There's lots of talk about the types of happiness and levels of happiness today, and psychologists even try to study happiness empirically. The old dispute, too, about whether an active life is best or a contemplative life continues on in various guises. But something that leaps out from St. Thomas is his vigorous defense of the idea that the human person can be happy only through a vision of God in his essence, the so-called beatific vision. This is puzzling in many ways. Wouldn't a life here free from pain be happy? Isn't physicality, that is living in a natural world with a body, necessary to happiness for us? How can a beatific vision make us happy apart from family and friends? But in this lecture, it will be argued that St. Thomas's view is not so implausible after all. Oh, the horror! I mean, that is what would trigger gay people on campus? Seriously? For those in the Catholic Center at Duke, you need way more backbone. This is and was a fight totally worth having. What were you afraid of? Apparently, what they were afraid of was one inartful sentence from a piece that Paculuk did 9 years ago. Here's what Paculuk had to say way back in 2010 from a Boston.com archive piece. In the column, Paculuk wrote that pornographic items, quote, go along with the same-sex lifestyle, which, as not being related to procreation, is inherently eroticized and pornographic. Just a few weeks later, when Boston.com reached out to Paculuk, this is what was written. In a phone interview yesterday, however, Paculuk said he now views that sentence as a weak argument. Quote, I think I probably would not make that point again, and I can see how it would be offensive, he said. That's it, folks. One sentence. One. From 9 freaking years ago. And this is what the Catholic Center backed away from over one senator hinting at a potential to trigger someone from the LGBTQ elemental PXYZ persuasion. Mother of God! To my fellow Catholics, life is a bit tough in the court of public opinion these days, and I feel every ounce of that pain and suffering caused by what our leadership has done. But that doesn't mean you don't stand up to the bullies anymore. In fact, you should be proud of the faith you do have in God and Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior. You should be having conversations on what our faith means and what happiness means within our faith. It's those discussions that should be defining what being a Catholic is about. There is nothing wrong with the talk Paculuk was going to have, and to not stand up against a group that has bullied those of real religious faith for years now is simply wrong. I hope you realize you have a whole lot of people that would stand by your side and fight this kind of crap. Mother of God. Alright, that does it for today's show. Don't forget you can help this show grow even larger by hitting that subscribe button and notifications bell while you're at it, since conservative and libertarian talk loves to be hidden by YouTube these days. I'd love your thoughts on the topics from today's show. Thoughtful comments, of course, in the comment section below. And as always, hit me up on Twitter at The Coppin Show. Until next time, keep on fighting false narratives with those facts, figures, and numbers.